How do brands communicate consistently and clearly, especially in the media spotlight or under pressure? Today on Marketing Over Bourbon, we're sitting down with someone who helps individuals and organizations do exactly that, Joel Staley. I'm your host, Sheila Butler of Butler Marketing Group, and Joel is the founder and CEO of JCS Communications. Joel has deep expertise in brand message strategy, executive media and presentation training, media relations strategy, crisis communications, and much more. In today's conversation, we'll explore how Joel's Disney experience shaped his approach, the essential elements of a strong social media strategy, tips to increase your confidence, as well as credibility on camera, and much more. So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and join us as we uncover Joel's media and communication insights to spark your success. Joel, thank you so much for being here. Cheers.
Oh, that's right.
Welcome,
Cheers.
welcome, welcome. It's so lovely to see you.
Pleasure.
I'm going to start with your career journey.
Okay.
So you've worked across many global agencies and major brands. So Edelman, Disney, and many more. What were the biggest lessons that you took from each chapter in your career, and how did they shape how you approach communications today?
Well, that's a good question. I'm going to try to keep that brief because I feel like I've had a lot of different jobs over the years. But I go back to the first global PR firm that I worked for, which is Burson Marsteller, which is Burson today. And I can think of a couple of things that really shaped my career that I learned there. One of them was how to add value. My boss taught me that. She was the greatest. Amy Fetterman, I still remember her, I still keep in touch with her. So she taught me, Joel, whenever you're doing something, you do it as best you can, but then think about what unique skills you might possess and how you can add a little bit more value to whatever you've just delivered. And that stuck with me. Another lesson that I learned there was media training, how to train people to be better spokespersons with a media interview situation. So she was a great media trainer, and she invited me to join her one day. She says, hey, I need somebody to come in and play the role of a difficult reporter and put the client through the paces. Yeah. And I had done a lot of theater in high school and college. I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. It's like playing another role. So I went and did that, enjoyed it, and afterwards she said, you need to do this more often.
Wow.
And so fortunately, she recruited me into this group of media trainers, and I learned a lot from that point on, and flew here, parachuted in there, whatever there was a crisis and they needed somebody to train an executive. I got to do a lot of that. So that was a lot of fun. But another quirky little thing that I learned from them is that I was in Miami when I had this job, and it was a Latin America headquarters. I speak Spanish fluently, so that was part of what I was doing. But the CEO was a really charming guy, Santiago Hinojosa, I remember him, and chatty and very personal. And whenever you met him in the halls, he'd say, well, how you doing? What's going on? What are you working on these days? And so I just realized, like, oh my gosh, I need to have like a 20 or 30-second story about what I'm doing, because this guy's going to see me and he's going to ask, and I can't just go, nothing. So that was a good learning for me. Edelman, which is another large global PR firm, I learned more about crisis communications there. Eventually, I was in charge, and I led crisis communications for the state of Florida. In one particular instance, got a phone call, and it's the phone call that the PR person never wants to get, and that is, we're CBS News 60 Minutes, and we want to do a story on your client. And it's not because they want to give you an award.
Right.
Yeah. So they owned me for about 6-7 months of my life, and I learned an incredible amount regarding how to help a company that's in a crisis, how to help a company that's being scrutinized, and what can you do for them to prevent them from just totally destroying their own reputation. The real nugget out of that is trust, and that's the nugget with regards to any crisis situation. You've got to preserve trust. That's what your job is as a communications person. Edelman, in fact, it's an annual survey that they do. They've done it for over 20 years, called their Trust Barometer. And they measure trust in a number of different ways. And so that's something that I learned from them. How to preserve trust, how to strengthen trust, how to repair trust if it's been damaged. So that's Burson and Edelman. I don't know, did you want to know about what I learned at Disney, or is that coming later?
Well,
maybe?
actually, it's the next question.
Okay.
So we'll dive into that, okay? All right, so you really had like the full circle Disney journey. So Jungle Cruise skipper, right?
Yeah,
Was that your first?
that's right.
Media relations intern, and ultimately PR director, which was travel trade, right, for Disney destinations.
Focus on travel, trade, media. That's right.
Yeah. So, what did you learn from your time at Disney about when you think of building brand trust
Okay.
and guest expectations, and then how do you apply that for your clients now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I went through Disney's training traditions 4 times. So some of it sank in.
I was gonna say it didn't stick the first time, Joel.
No,
There were
it's just,
4 keys at the time.
yeah, I did it for I did it for
Four?
a college program, and then I did it again for my internship with the press and publicity department, and then I did it again when I got hired to do front desk and guest relations at the Contemporary, and then I did it a 4th time when I came back a few years later as a PR director in sales and travel operations. And believe it or not, that is just a masterclass in branding.
Yeah.
They help you understand your why. They help you understand how you, as an individual cast member or in another organization employee, can actually live the brand. So often we see, a vision statement or a mission statement. It's just paper on the wall. Your frontline employees, and dare say your senior executives, they don't really know what that means in terms of how they should speak and how they should act. But at Disney, they tell you from day one, this is your role. And this is going to be the type of brand behavior that we want you to engage in.
And the guest expectations and how
Yeah.
you're going to deliver that.
Exceed guest
Yeah.
expectations, surprise and delight, all of these things. And so I learned a lot from branding. Didn't realize that was branding until later in my career,
Yeah.
but it's there. And it's a hallmark of Disney that they would start that from day one. Something that I try to teach my clients that I've learned from that is that just because you have a vision statement and mission statement, just because you have a list of quote brand values, it doesn't mean you're living the brand. It doesn't mean you have activated the brand as an organization.
Right.
And you have to take a look at things like your advertising and communications, because when you do that, you're making promises, you're extending brand promises to your customers, clients, and prospective clients and customers. And you're saying basically, if you come to my store, my location, or my facility, whatever it is, and you engage with me, this is the kind of experience you're going to have. You're going to get this, and we're going to treat you this way, and you're going to walk away feeling that. And people think, that sounds wonderful. That's what I want to do. That's the experience I want to have. So they show up, and imagine it's a big box retailer. IKEA used to be a client of mine, so sorry, that popped into my brain. So big box retailer, and you show up and you're like, well, and you walk in the door and people ignore you. There doesn't seem to be anyone around to help you. And finally you get a hold of somebody, and it's not until you're at the checkout, and they treat you like dirt. And you're thinking to yourself, this isn't what they promised in their marketing and their advertising. Right. Basically, you've got people there who are working for you who just betrayed every one of the brand promises that you made. Yeah. And the average Fortune 500 company spends over $250 million a year in marketing communications. So they can just flush that right down the toilet because they haven't taught, like Disney does, their frontline employees and everyone how to live the brand.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's critical, it's crucial.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I do branding work for clients, we define not only the brand promise, but then also what is the end effect for someone who takes you up on that promise. So it's very clear, right?
It has
I'm
to
telling
be.
you to do this, but this is what you get in return. That's it's substantiating it.
Yeah.
I want to touch on Jungle Cruise Skipper.
Oh, alrighty.
So, what do you think that prepared you to do? Did it help you more so think on your feet because you have a very long script? You have multiple scripts, right?
Well, you do.
And it ties back to your theater days.
It did. I think that's why I got the job.
Right.
But well, I got assigned to do that when I was in the college program. So, yeah, it's a long script, but the fun thing is that script allows you multiple options or multiple jokes, if you can call them that, dad jokes, we'll say, we'll qualify this, at each point along the river. And so what I got good at is I tried to memorize the entire script word for word because I didn't want to think about the words in the moment. I just wanted to look at the situation, the people that I had on my boat, and say, which one of the 4 jokes that I could tell here is going to work best, and fish that out of my bag and use it. That actually works very similarly with a media interview. You've got your key messages, right? Your story arc, and then you've got the supporting data and proof points. And every question that you're asked, your job is to get back to those key messages no matter what they ask you. And so the better you know and have mastered all of those key messages, the easier it is to see from what question they give you how you can get there the easiest,
Exactly.
the fastest,
The
and
arc.
the most natural way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I certainly learned that as a jungle cruise skipper.
I love it. I love it. Let's jump into your business. So, JCS Communications. So, your business is thriving, and you offer multiple services, right? So, brand messaging slash strategy, brand architecture development, executive media and
Yeah.
presentation training, media relations, crisis management. Which one has been the most challenging from a client perspective out of all those?
Oh, um, believe it or not, and it seems on the surface to be the most simple, but that's deceitful, is media relations, media training, teaching them to be better spokespersons. Most people, if they're, well, let me rephrase that. Most executives have probably done a lot of media interviews by the time that they come for a training. And often they will tell me, I'm only here today because my vice
My
president
PR person
of
told me.
communications said I had to come, so let's get this over with. I've done dozens of interviews and blah, 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 blah. And so they don't think they need it. And my job is to help them understand that you could be doing this so much better. It could be a competitive advantage for you and your company. You could be dominating the narrative, and that could really help you lead in the various categories in which you operate. But instead, you're content to just seem like, I don't know, a sour old executive. So you're ready to step it up a level because you're already good, I guess, right? But this isn't about good, it's about great. I can help you get there, but you're going to have to take some criticism, and you're going to have to make some changes.
Yeah.
And sometimes they get it.
I was going to
Sometimes
say, how does that land?
it just depends on the executive. Sometimes they'll continue in their stubborn ways, and I say, that's fine, I tell you what, let's do some practice media interviews. And I take a kind of a Marines approach. You have to break them down in order to build them up. And you pin them into a corner with a couple of tough questions, and suddenly they feel vulnerable, and they realize, wow, I could goof up and really hurt my company's reputation. Maybe Joel has something to share with me.
I love it. Social media, right? Growing more and more and more. So when you think about influencers versus individuals versus businesses, what are the essential elements in a social media strategy? And how might those strategies be different depending upon if you're an influencer or an individual or a business?
Yeah, those are great questions. I like to start at a kind of a 30,000 foot level. And I want to remind people that social media is a channel. Okay, so the strategy is your story. The strategy is your message. The tactics are what support that strategy. And the tactics are associated with whether it's social media, whether it's traditional media, whatever it happens to be. And so you can have all the tactics you want. If you don't have a great strategy, if you don't have a great story and great, supporting key messages, you're not going to get far. So I try to help clients understand this is what we have to iron out first. This is what we have to develop. And then as you get into each of those categories, and again, I'm obviously thinking from a corporate perspective right now, you think about your audience. What do they care about? You're entering into a community. What's important in this community? You need to kind of listen for a minute before you start opining there in that community. You need to, and this is a challenge with a lot of companies like, Joel, we've got this new X, Y, and Z. Can you really promote this with media for us? I'm like, well, we need to find, the news angles. Well, this is the news angle, and it's, whatever their call to action is. And I'm like, guys, that's wonderful, but reporters and your social media community, they don't care about that. We have to find the intersection between what they care about, what their self-interest is, and what you've got to sell. Yeah. And that's our sweet spot. So until we get there, we won't be effective. And so as you get into the tactical, that's when you start thinking about that sweet spot and how am I going to communicate in a way that's it's going to resonate with them.
How many times has someone said, well, just create something that will go viral? As though that's a formula.
Yeah.
You go,
Yeah. Yeah, they think that. They think,
they
gosh,
do, right? Like,
oh, you're giving me
dude.
more credit than I deserve. Because, yeah, I think in those moments you have to find a way that's not condescending to help educate them a little bit. Say, look, there's a little bit of luck involved here. There's a little bit of, striking, in the moment when the planets aligned. Yeah. I can't promise you a viral moment, but what I can promise you is that our messaging strategy is going to be on point. I can promise you that the tactics are going to be solid and we're going to reach a great audience. If we're fortunate enough for it to go viral, then that's going to be wonderful. That'll be icing on the cake. But I don't know if that's something I can promise.
Exactly. Right. I'm also interested in your thoughts on what advice do you have for companies as they pick an influencer?
Oh, that's a very good question, and it really there's an underlying PR current to that
Yes.
choice for sure.
Yeah.
You want to choose someone who's aligned with your brand and your brand values. We talked about that before. And what are those? And is this person living those brand values? What kind of relationship does this influencer have with his or her followers?
Right.
And
Is there a nice overlap
yeah,
between your audience and their
yeah. I mean,
audience?
you could be
All that.
reaching a great audience, a large audience, but it might not be your audience.
Right.
Or it might be a very large audience and then a small percentage is
Hmm.
your audience. And that's not very efficient with your marketing dollar. Also, you should look at their history. You should look at, how do they talk about your products, your category, your services. Um, you need to know who you're, jumping into the pool with there and swimming a few laps with because, um, yeah, that can be very damaging to your brand too if you overlook something,
Yeah.
if they go one way or
Right.
another.
Exactly. Well, I think sometimes they fall in love with just the thought of working with someone and having that person be the influencer for their business without thinking through, is this the right person? Does it further my business and my objectives and
Yeah,
so forth? Is there good brand alignment?
yeah. There's a great case in point that illustrates the problems with getting the wrong influencer, um, and it's because you can feel betrayed. Think about Bill Cosby. Okay, he banked for decades on the image of being a kind and wise and warm father figure.
Mhm.
If you grew up in the '80s, you loved the Cosby Show. The whole country did, and so that's why it was so difficult when he betrayed that image, the very image that he banked on,
Yeah.
the very image that was the basis of his career. He betrayed, and you're never coming back from that. That kind of that level of deception is irredeemable. And so take a look at the influencers that you're intending to work with and make sure that, okay, they have the right brand values and that the images coincides with what you want, but also hedge your bets a little bit. Is this the kind of person, look into their past. Don't be afraid to dig into the closet and find the skeletons
Yeah.
because eventually they'll come out.
It's funny. Something just popped into my head when we were working on the Disney Visa credit card launch at Bank One, which ultimately Bank One became Chase.
Oh, yeah.
Um, uh, Someone approached a family member of Lindsay Lohan's
Okay.
approached us and offered her as the spokesperson for the card, and it was before a lot of things happened in her
Okay.
life.
Okay.
We're like, oof, okay, good, because you never know. You may work with that influencer
Yeah.
early on, and then
Right.
something happens, or
Yeah.
like Pudding and Cosby. Or it may have already happened in that person. And do you really want to tie your brand and what you're
Yeah.
trying to seed as your brand and build that reputation to
Yeah.
someone else? It's a big risk.
The risk can be that you don't put all your eggs in that one basket,
Yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
no
exactly.
one's perfect. Everyone's fallible. So
Media training. So you're very, very well known for media training. What do executives get right? And what often maybe are missteps that they have as they're preparing for an interview? And what tips do you think they should know to increase their confidence and credibility on camera?
it's almost the same answer for all three of those. And I'm not trying to be coy or cute. It's preparation. The best, absolute best spokespersons. I- Imagine, imagine a Broadway play, right?
Mhm.
And you go to that play, and it's amazing. I mean, it impacts you. There's probably moments where you get a little emotional, if it's very well done, and you walk out of the theater maybe with your perspective somewhat changed on life, you know. And some people, when I'm working with executives, they say, "Well, Joel, I don't want to sound scripted." And I'll give them the example of the Broadway play, and I'm going to go, spoiler alert, they're all scripted. And why does it sound so good? It sounds so good because they rehearsed ad nauseum. They're not thinking about the lines. They know the lines. What they're thinking about is, where's my audience right now? Uh-oh, there's a nice laugh here. I better hold back on my lines until this passes so that my timing can be good. Or I'm playing off of my fellow actor or actress, and wait a minute, I got to wait for just the right moment so that the comedic timing can be on here. Or, oh, they're doing something different tonight. Let me see if I can add to that. Those are the kinds of things that you should be thinking about if you want to be a great spokesperson. Okay, so don't get caught up in, I don't want to sound scripted. That's for amateurs. Get caught up in, I need to learn my script so that I can sound like a pro.
Yeah.
And that, that answers your question of what do they not do? They don't rehearse. You put together this great briefing document which has all of their messaging and background information that they could want, and they look at it 5 minutes before they step on camera. It's like, gosh, that's a recipe for disaster. And what should they be doing? They should be looking at that a couple of days in advance. They should sit down with you. They should do some Q&A to rehearse, with you as the reporter and them answering the questions to make sure that they're delivering in the way that they should. What do they forget? They forget to anticipate tough questions. So many times, you sit down with a reporter and they're supposed to cover topic X. Well, that's great, and they covered it, but that particular day, there was some big news that hit. So they're going to ask you your opinion on that big news, which doesn't have anything to do in the world with your business. Right. But you need to be prepared for that so that you can bridge or move back to the messages that you need to stay on. So that's my 3-for-1 answer there, I guess.
I like that. Okay, a 3-for. You know what's interesting? I was thinking about this earlier today because I rehearse a little bit beforehand because I write these things, but
sure.
I try to read it as I'm writing it, but then I have to refresh my memory. And it reminded me of back in college when I majored in music and business/arts administration. On the music side, I was a classically trained singer.
Oh, wow.
And there were certain parts of a piece, like if they had a lot of runs in it and so forth, that were really, really hard. And I learned that rather than starting from the beginning of the piece every single time, that I would start with the hardest pieces first, wherever they were, at the end or the middle or whatever, master that, and then bridge how do I get from there to the end or from there and kind of back it up again. So do you think that sometimes in media training that sometimes people miss out because maybe they start at the beginning every single time and towards the end they just aren't as well rehearsed?
Yeah, I know. I haven't thought of it that way.
Does that make sense for reverse architecture?
It does, because you spend more time naturally on the things, if it's as a sequence, you're going to spend more time on 1, 2, 3 than 4, 5, 6 because you might not get to 4, 5, 6 every time.
Exactly. Right. And you get stopped and you're like, oh, I practiced, but I only got halfway through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hope they don't ask me 4, 5, 6 because I'm in trouble. No, that's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah. So start from the back sometimes. PR strategy and messaging. So what are the key ingredients that every business should include as they develop their PR strategy and messaging?
It's the same thing as an individual. What do I want to be known for? People think of you. I mean, brands are funny. It's the most valuable thing that you own, but that you don't own because it lives in the minds of your clients and customers. So what do you want to be known for? What are those things? And you need to make intentional decisions about those things, and everything should cascade down from that. And I don't think people really think about that. I think they think transactionally. I think they think very tactically. And so I try to elevate my clients' thinking and say, hey, let's start here first, and let's build a reputation around these things.
Yeah. I remember at Disney when they were rolling out brand management and teaching everyone. It was sort of like a master class in branding. And, one of the key things that I think Disney learned that some businesses have learned and some haven't, which is never underestimate the amount of brand ownership that your audience has.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. I mean, think about it this way. Years ago, I did work for a boat manufacturer. This is Correct Craft. They make Nautiques. These are ski boats, wakeboard boats, et cetera. They're really, really fun company and an amazing company. There's just not time today to talk about them. But in any case, they hold reunions, owner reunions. And you just mentioned, how involved people are with the brand.
Excellent. Yeah.
And these people show up by the thousands to these Correct Craft owner reunions. And they get swag there, sure, but they're there to meet and greet with other people who, like them, just have fallen in love with this brand. And they share their moments, and they share their memories, and they share their excitement and passion for that brand. And then they get to meet company leadership, they get to meet celebrities that also own the brand, et cetera, et cetera. But in my mind, that's one of the best illustrations of how involved people become, emotionally involved with the brands that they like and they are loyal to.
It's interesting. Saturn came to mind. Do you remember back in the day?
They held
people, they had reunions.
Yeah.
You could tour the factory. This is where your car was born.
Yeah.
right? All those different things. Yeah, it doesn't happen very often. I
No.
think brands are afraid sometimes to open up the doors and have customers come through.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a scary thing. But, brands have personalities. Ideally, people see themselves in your brand. You've got a story here, and they're like, I'm that person in this story. That's me. You know. So it's really important that they recognize that and tap into that emotion.
Yeah. When I work with brands and go through my branding process, not only do we define the brand personality as though it's really like a physical person,
Yeah,
right? What would it be
profile.
to have
Yeah.
a conversation? And one of my favorite examples is if Visa, MasterCard, and American Express were all at a dinner party, what would they say? Where would they have recently vacationed? What car?
Yeah.
What do they dress?
That's a
Like how
great
do they dress?
exercise.
What do they look like? Right?
Yeah.
Because but when I'm also working with companies, I not only define the brand personality, but I say, what is it not? And then that way it creates these guardrails
Right.
to make sure that we're staying within the bounds of that.
Right. That's funny. You just made me think of conversations that I have with my wife sometimes because she'll say, I got you this X. I'm like, no, I don't use that brand. She goes, what does it matter? And I go, I am not
you're
that
killing me right now.
brand. I am not that brand. I don't wear those or whatever it happens to be.
This is what I do for a living. What do you mean? It's
I know.
the brand doesn't
I
matter.
know. Well, I love my wife, but she still has a hard time explaining to other people what I do for a living. So
But when you don't see yourself in the brand, right?
yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't compute. All right, well, I'm going to give you a hot second to
Okay.
sip on your water.
Let's do it.
While I thank our amazing sponsor, D3 Brewing Company. So they are the makers of Benny's Brew, Three Wishes, Midnight Pumpkin, Retired Rides, and other fine craft beers. So D3 Brewing Company, they understand the importance of creating connections and crafting something that is unforgettable. So whether you're toasting to a big idea, celebrating a small win, maybe just savoring a moment of inspiration, D3 Brewing Company has the perfect pour for every occasion. And with every sip, you're not just enjoying an excellent beer, you're part of a story around loyalty, fun, and bringing people together. So cheers to great beer, great conversations, and the magic of D3 Brewing Company. Drinks up. All right, that was it.
That was a great commercial.
I hope you got a good swig of water because now we're diving into crisis communication. And I've got two questions. I know, right? I've got two questions for you. So when a crisis hits,
Right.
leaders often want to move very quickly,
Yeah.
but speed can sometimes backfire and be a detriment.
Yeah.
So in the first hour of a crisis, what are the priorities? And then what are the essential elements that every crisis communication plan needs to include?
I would say that whenever there's a crisis, those companies that do best out of a crisis are those who get the right people in the room within the first 24 hours. And they properly assess what's going on and then make important decisions about it. And by the right people, I mean people that have the information that you need, people that have the ability to make decisions and pull levers to activate things. Those are the right people. And you need to know, it's actually pretty specific. You need to know what happened. You need to know who knows what happened. When did it happen? And if you know all of that, then what was immediately done because of that?
Right. And what may still come.
And the reason that you have to know the answers to those questions is because those are the answers that the media is going to require of you. And you want to be able to say, when you speak to the media, something along the lines of, we don't know everything that's happening. There's some sort of investigation that's going on. But we learned at X o'clock, and it better be pretty precise, that X, Y, and Z happened, and ABC person was there, and we have activated PDQY plan of action for emergencies, or that we were prepared for this inevitability. And we did everything that we could immediately to protect stakeholders and community members. And what happens is companies get themselves in trouble with that because they weren't prepared.
Right.
And
they acted too quickly.
Either they
didn't
acted
have
too
all
quickly,
the answers,
or it didn't get up the chain to leadership.
Right.
And so it was just kept down here because maybe people were afraid we can't tell boss about this. And then people get hurt or harmed, or it leaks out or whatever it is. And then they can't say, this is when it happened, and this is when we knew, and we took immediate action to protect and to, keep safe. they can't say that. And then they start to lie, and then the lie is actually what gets them in the most trouble. So yeah, that's the key. You mentioned plans. Yeah, having a plan. And most of the time, I find that when I engage with companies, their plan is so focused on operations, and that's not a bad thing. But it's so focused on operations that they haven't thought about the various scenarios that, I mean, I think with some work, this is what I do for companies, is I look at their vulnerabilities and I say, well, I can see 4 or 5 crisis situations that just might happen to you. Uh, and if you know that, why wouldn't you prepare all the messaging in advance?
Exactly.
Why
And
would-
role play, right?
Yes.
Like have the entire drill.
I conduct tabletop crisis
Yeah.
communication simulations for my clients. And, this is the FDA, and we're calling because we heard, or this is the USDA, or whatever regulatory agency it is. Or here's your local congressperson who needs to seem like they're out doing something helpful, right? They're going to take a look at you. And it's the media too. And who are you going to put in front of these people to tell your story? And those persons have to step forward in the simulation. And let's see if they can remember the messaging that's been prepared. Let's see if they're smart and use the tactics that they've been taught to help in those situations.
Yeah.
So anyway.
It's interesting. We're going to get to banking in just a couple questions, but as we stay on crisis communication, before I get to part 2,
Okay.
what I would say is I was surprised working at a regional bank in Florida that they didn't have a plan for when there's a hurricane.
Really?
And so I said, okay, where's the playbook? Because there's a hurricane coming. And I go, what? We didn't really have that. Okay, well, we're going to create one now. So because branches are based upon the storm, the branches are going to close at different times. Here's how you access cash. Here's the ATM network where you can get cash without a fee, blah, 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 blah. And then the branches are reopening, but not all of them are happening at the same time. So how are we going to communicate what's opening up again? And it, this is what we put on the website. This is what we put in social media and all these different things.
Was this a bank that was based in another state?
No, it was based, right? I know.
Wow.
Because again,
okay.
hurricanes in Florida, who would have thought? So,
Yeah.
but what was interesting was we documented everything
Okay.
and saved all the creatives because sure enough, within the span of, 2-3 weeks, a second hurricane and had to go through the same thing again. Different branches were the ones closing first and whatever,
Right.
but we had the playbook. So
Yeah.
what do you do when a business just doesn't have anything?
We have to start from scratch.
Yeah, you do, right?
And
Even internally, if they don't hire
Yeah.
you, like you got to have a plan.
I think the first thing that you need to do is really get buy-in from senior executives. Get them to understand how vulnerable they are and how quickly you need to act and the resources you need to make this happen.
Yeah.
What could happen if they're not prepared and what it could look like if you are prepared. And typically, if you're successful in that area, then it's a lot easier to put together a plan. It's a lot easier to get operations folks to give you the cooperation that you're going to need from them. It's a lot easier to put a pause on other priorities that senior executives might be pushing you on. Say, that's got to wait because I'm doing this now.
Yeah.
This is the priority, the crisis plan. I think another thing that's really important, and I do this in vulnerability assessments that I do for my clients, is you need to walk the facilities. You need to be out there looking through your eyes, not asking other people. And the reason is because as a public relations professional who deals with the media, you're able to adopt the perspective of an investigative reporter. This looks fine unless I'm an investigative reporter, and then I see a big story here. So all of those things have to be seen through the eyes of a reporter. And when you do that, you bring a different perspective, and suddenly vulnerabilities appear where they thought there were none, or where we had become anesthetized to them, or
Right.
blinded to them. So
Yeah, exactly. So part 2, as we talk more about crisis communications, in your experience, what are the most common mistakes that are made by organizations in a crisis, and how can leaders avoid making the situation worse?
well, I think that the worst thing they can do is lie or try to deceive. The American public is actually pretty darn forgiving, believe it or not,
And forgetful.
and forgetful. If you can demonstrate that you did everything you could to correct and to fix and to make whole, we still trust you. I think we're going to keep doing business with you.
Yeah.
Because you handled that pretty well. Everybody has something that happens to them.
Right.
And
Bad things happen.
yeah, you did that well.
Mhm.
What happens is that when we feel deceived, like Bill Cosby, betrayed that deeply, like, no, I'm not going back. I can't do business with this person anymore, or this entity anymore. So I think that's the biggest mistake that people make. Um, yeah, I think a lot of businesses, something happens to them and they've gotten away with things in the past. We just kept quiet and it went away. So just hoping and praying that it's just going to go away and not doing anything about it, that's the worst thing you can do, because what happens is so often is that the media want a story. And if they find out any part of what's happened, they're going to go for it. And if you're not talking, then in their minds, that means there's something even better behind the scenes that I've got to find. And they press and they press and they press. They're going to tell your story. You might choose to not be a part of it, but they're going to tell your story. And you may not like the way they tell your story.
I was going to say, you likely won't like the narrative.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So the best thing to do is to step in. Again, if you have trained, executives that have some talent with this, step in and tell your story.
Mm-hmm.
Don't defend, explain.
Right. Own the narrative, or someone will own it for you.
Yeah. And you know what happens there is they're going to, well, they're still going to say that other stuff. Yes, that's going to be their story, and yours would be right next to it. And the people who like you are going to find reasons to continue liking you with a story that you told. Don't leave it with just their side of it.
Yeah. I think that's the same for branding as well. So often when companies hire people like you and I, they're coming to us because they maybe need to refresh the brand perspective and narrative because their business has expanded. But often if they haven't started at all with branding, there are associations that people have with your brand. And either you're telling them that and explaining that and creating the supporting reasons why, or they're just coming up with it on their own. And because you're not owning the narrative.
Right. Yeah. And, that can be for good or for bad.
Right.
There's some great grassroots, associations with your brand out there. We should be capitalizing on that, right? And you might be ignorant to it, or the other way around. There's some very negative connotations, and you'd like to make those go away.
Yeah, I like to be in front of it.
Whatever you
rather
are,
than behind it.
Be in front. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't be reactive.
We're taking a quick bourbon break. So while glasses are refilled, let's talk about something as important as a good pour: your marketing. I'm the founder of Butler Marketing Group, and we help businesses, small, medium, and Fortune 500, navigate growth and transformation with marketing that's strategic, intentional, and built to leave a legacy. Whether you need branding, marketing strategy, loyalty, or a fractional chief marketing officer, we've got the perfect blend of services for your business. Contact Butler MG to get started. Now, back to the show.
So financial services and communications. So you worked at Seacoast Bank,
I did,
right?
yeah.
As a SVP of brand as well as external communications. Thinking about financial services, since we both have been in that space, trust is paramount.
Yes.
And so what is different about communications in financial services, and what does reputation building look like in highly regulated industries like financial services?
It is highly regulated, and there's a lot of things that you, because of regulation, can't say, right? I think that you have to take into mind that financial instruments and financial services, these are complex things. And so people don't buy these on a whim. They don't buy them as an impulse buy, right? And so it takes more of what I call front end. And I see kind of a three-step process for getting anyone to buy anything. First, they have to be aware that your product or service exists. Then, they start to learn about it and they build these informed opinions about it, for bad or for good. And then, and only then, are they ready to respond to a call to action. And so in terms of financial services, if you don't pay a lot of attention to those awareness and, brand or opinion formative activities, you're going to really struggle. So I think that there's a great focus on those front end things in the banking industry, because people make those choices, and you can't really, there's not a lot you can do sometimes because your hands are held by regulations. I think that brand building in that sense also has to, as you rightly pointed out, do with trust. And you can build trust in a lot of ways without talking about interest rates or about talking about CDs or whatever account that you have to offer.
Frankly, trigger terms.
Yeah.
Right? Where I say pricing and suddenly I have a whole bunch of other things I have to explain.
Yeah. So I think Seacoast does a wonderful job, especially in markets where they've been the longest, of building trust by being involved in the community, by being involved supporting charitable organizations and other organizations. And so they have this presence, and it's been there over the years. And so that builds a kind of credibility and trust that's really hard to manufacture otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. Being part of the community.
Yeah.
Awards. So you've garnered some awards, which are amazing, such as for boating safety outreach campaigns.
Yeah.
And you've been recognized as well for crisis communications. So what can brands learn about educating the public in a way that seems, that is authentic and doesn't come off as preachy?
You thought these questions through.
I tried. I tried.
It's a really great question, because we do see so many of those quote education campaigns that seem pretty condescending.
Yeah.
I think that I think that it has to do with information. I think that it has to do with making sources of information and education known. I think it has to do with telling stories that highlight the great behavior and the benefits of that great behavior that you're trying to educate people about.
Yeah.
It's less a 1, 2, 3, and it's more like, can you believe this would happen? And then somebody who's got some sort of credibility says, well, what saved them while they were wearing their life jacket?
Right.
And suddenly that penetrates,
without
right?
being preachy.
Yeah, without being preachy.
Yeah.
And that, in the case of my client, the Water Sports Foundation, helping win this award, it was a national award for Best PR Campaign of the Year.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was really fun. This was back in 2021. So we're in the pandemic, right? And it's pretty new. And so in that time period, people were buying boats like crazy. You couldn't hold an outdoor wedding, but I could go out on a boat. I couldn't do this, trip to Europe, but I could go out on a boat. And so people started thinking, I'm going stir crazy. I've always wanted to buy a boat. I'm not spending money on those other things. I've got some cash in my pocket.
Right.
Doggone it, this is the year I'm buying a boat. And so they did in record numbers. But these were new boaters. They'd never owned a boat before. They hadn't gone through and in fact, a lot of the boating schools, which were done in person, were shut down because of COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that wasn't available. So as they brought me in, I said, oh, guys, I see a perfect storm, if I can use that metaphor. Yeah. Perfect storm brewing here, because you've got all of these new boaters, which is wonderful, but so many of them are not trained and don't have the safety that they
don't even know they need.
Safety training, yeah.
Right.
They don't know what they don't know. Boy, you could see, and every year the Coast Guard puts out a report. Next year we could see a report that says that there were so many, incidents and accidents and injuries, and that's going to look bad, and that's going to make boating seem unsafe, when actually it's incredibly safe if you compare it to driving a car or anything else. We need to get out ahead of that. Well, what can we do? I go, we have to position ourselves as the de facto experts when it comes to safety. We have to tell the media that this is the story that's developing. And by the way, here's how we can protect people who are new boat owners by giving them this wonderful information. And so that's what we did. And media were interested, because when they heard, there's all this new influx of boaters, and there could be more accidents and more carnage, because media likes that. Well, wow, we'll talk to them. Maybe they can tell us the story. And it worked. We got in front of it, and we didn't shy away. We didn't hide. We didn't let other people tell the story. We told our own story, and we got in the right messaging, and it made a big difference. And in fact, the following year, when the Coast Guard measured, more people had better attitudes about wearing a life jacket than they had in the previous year.
Wow.
So we made a difference. Yay.
You see it in the data.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
What advice would you give to leaders, and like the single best piece of advice you would have, when they're thinking about communications and reputation?
What do you want to be known for? Make that very clear in your mind, and not complicated. Very straight ahead, very simple, very direct. And I tell my clients 2 or 3 messages at the most. Don't try to make it more complicated than that.
And drive that home.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
Winston Churchill said, if you're going to make a point, don't be subtle. Take a big hammer, whack it over the head again, whack, a tremendous whack, again and again. He's a great orator, but anyway, I always think of Winston Churchill with a sledgehammer when I try to teach my clients. Say it, say it, say it again.
Excellent. So we're going to wrap up with 4 standard questions in the show. So the first one is, in the spirit of this show, purely as a metaphor,
right?
If your approach to crisis communications were a bourbon, what bourbon would it be and why?
Well, I'm not a drinker, but I thought, bourbon, what is bourbon? And so I did a little research. And bourbon starts with limestone filtered crystal clear water. And when you're doing crisis, you've got to have the pure unadulterated truth.
Yeah.
You've got to be transparent, just like crystal clear water. And so that would be my metaphor. Just focus on the basics, get to the truth, and you own it and you tell it. And that's your best chance for preserving trust and for the continuity of your business.
Well played. Excellent answer. First time at Disney, if you could go back, not necessarily first time at Disney, but if you could go back and experience one thing at Disney, again, for the first time ever with fresh eyes,
Yeah.
what do you want that to be?
Well, I would do something that my dad did. And I'm a little jealous that he had this experience. So years ago, he came and visited me while I was working at the parks. And I said, well, Dad, we got to go do, Hollywood Tower of Terror. And he goes, sounds great. And he's somebody who was a young person in the 60s. And so he knew what the Twilight Zone was, and he loved the theming. So we get on there and we're going through, and he's, digging, and I can tell he likes the story that's gone on so far. I assumed he knew that there was a drop in the ride.
Oh.
He did not. And so the cab gets to a particular point, and it starts shaking up and down. He's like, oh, and he grabbed my arm, and then whoosh, we go up and down, and he's like, why didn't you tell me? Dad, I thought you knew. It's a big tower.
Did you not see it walking on the way? The doors open, people scream.
I don't know what he thought or told
okay.
But
Missed all that.
I am so jealous of that perspective. That's got to be the best Hollywood Tower of Terror hotel ride ever. You didn't know it was coming, and you're completely surprised. So if I could go back somehow and not know what that ride was and ride it, that would be my best Disney magical moment.
That's hysterical. Did your dad ever forgive you for that?
Yeah, he did. My dad's a fun guy, so he thought it was great.
Excellent. So the next question is from a previous guest, R.K. Kelly. We were singing her praises earlier.
That's right.
So her question is, did you ever want to give up? And did you, or what changed?
So many times. Yeah, life is hard. Work is hard. Things get hard. And, there's been times when jobs didn't go well and I got let go and I felt this tall. And, you just have to, regroup. What I did in those moments is I talked to people that I knew loved me and would be honest with me. Mm-hmm. And they helped. I also took moments and went back. I try to collect really nice thank you notes that I get from people. And I went back and read them, and they said some pretty nice things about me in those moments. And it gave me a boost, I needed it. So those are the kinds of things that I do. But I'm also pretty darn stubborn. And I've learned over my life that the best things come when you don't give up. And it doesn't, I can think of many, many things in my life where I was trying to achieve a particular thing, and it's not a straight line. No. Sometimes you have moments where you go down, but if you don't give up and you keep pressing, I've learned you can work through those things and still achieve, your dream. So those are the things that I cling to in moments when I'm feeling down.
I think that's especially important, you and I as entrepreneurs as well, right? Every year is so unpredictable. And we were talking earlier before the camera started rolling, the roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
And trying to not, for me, I try to make the highs not as high and the lows not as low, because it's just, it's not a steady paycheck. It's not steady work. You have to have that sense of resilience to keep going.
Yeah.
And you do have some of those moments you go, should I get a full-time job again? Fortunately, those moments were very brief early on with my business.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are those moments where I go, should I just give up on this? I don't know.
Yeah, I've
and
had
then
many
something
of those
happens,
moments.
right? I think that's when the universe is like, oh, nope, here you go.
Yeah.
You're good. Nope, don't give up.
I get a call from a client who's in a crisis and wants to pay me a big retainer tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, okay, I won't quit.
Exactly. And I can sleep tonight.
Yes. Thank you.
Good. What question do you want me to ask a future guest?
I want you to ask them where they get or where they have, or where are they mentally or physically when they have their eureka moments. Mm-hmm. We all need really good, creative, great ideas, solutions sometimes. And how do they, I want to know, how do they get them? Do they go meditate somewhere, or do they lock themselves in a closet, or is there a particular song they play, or whatever that is for them? Yeah. I'd be curious to know what their process is for that.
I love that. Lee Kitchen, one of our buds from Magic Makers,
Yes.
was on a while ago.
Oh, but he has a good answer.
Right, but well, I'll ask someone, not Lee, because but the reason why I bring him up is that he was talking about how often in his ideation sessions and so forth to really generate great ideas, you have to sort of like go off into the forest. You can't be like, I need to generate an idea about beer right now, and I'm going to think for 30 minutes about beer, write down everything I know.
Beer.
Right. And instead you're like, I'm going to go wander on this totally different path, because it does get your brain going in a different way, and then you come up with those really interesting ideas.
Yeah.
It's not unusual that people come up with great ideas when they're walking their dog. And they're
That's
like, when I
true.
get back home, I hope I remember to write that down. But again, you're not thinking about that. You were thinking about
Right.
walking your dog, and then suddenly, boom, it came to mind. So yeah, I want to know people's eureka moments.
Yeah. How do they do it?
Yeah.
What works for them?
Excellent. Okay, I will ask. Asked and answered. All right, so we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise on the show today.
Allowing me the moment to do so.
Thank you. Your advice on brand messaging, media training, crisis communication, and reputation strategy is really invaluable. And businesses can't put a dollar amount on that, honestly, over time. A special thanks to the amazing team here at Iron Pixel Studios, my amazing crew back here, and D3 Brewing Company for being a very generous sponsor of the show. And I'm happy to feature their fine craft beers on this episode and all my episodes of Marketing Over Bourbon. And for everyone watching, I hope that you found this conversation has given you some really practical takeaways to strengthen your PR messaging, sharpen your social media strategy, and boost your confidence and credibility when you're on camera. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe to Marketing Over Bourbon. And remember, the best ideas often come when you take a moment to savor something great. So drinks up, Kungaloosh. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Joel.
Thanks.
Cheers to you.